Hey quilting friends, it's Kim here today, and I am so excited to walk you through the process of binding a scalloped border. And it's easier than you may think. I'm actually going to be using Kimberbell's Star Spangled Beauty quilt, but once you learn the technique, you can do it on just about anything. So grab that rotary cutter, your binding fabric, and let's go ahead and get started. Step number 1, cutting those bias binding strips. Now, if you haven't done so already, make sure to cut those binding strips on the bias of your fabric. And if you've never done that before, no worries, we've got you. You can find a step-by-step tutorial provided in the guide of your instructions. Now, if you'd also like a video tutorial, well, we've got that too. You can find how to cut bias binding at Kimberbell's YouTube channel. Step number 2, starch it up. Now we're going to starch this fabric, and this was actually a tip given to me from our product development team. They felt like if you can do this first, it's really going to help stabilize your binding fabric and help prevent those puckers. Okay, now it's time to roll up our quilt while we bind those scallops. Rolling it up just like this helps avoid the weight of the quilt from pulling on your stitches. Step number 4, where to start your binding. Start binding on one long straight edge of your quilt. Leave an approximate 10-inch tail at the beginning so that you have room to join the ends at the end. Begin sewing using a 1/4-inch seam allowance. Now you're ready for the fun part by placing that binding around the scallops. Now to do this, you're going to want to make sure that you don't stretch the binding too much. We just want to gently ease it around the curve. Step number 6, pivoting. I'm eventually going to hit what I call the valley of the scallop. And again, you're doing this at a 1/4-inch seam allowance. When you get to this point, go ahead and stop and keep your needle down in the down position. Then we're going to pivot and gently shift that fabric to line up with the next scallop's edge. Now this is going to be super important for keeping everything nice and aligned. Continue sewing at a 1/4-inch. And finally, continue this process until you go around the entire quilt. And then you're just going to join those two ends together at the end with your preferred method. We have even more tips and tricks on binding and cutting on the bias. Be sure to check those out at the guide, which is packed with all the information you need for success. Oh, and one more tip. As you're preparing to finish the binding, go ahead and take your scissors and cut just a small little triangle from each valley. This is going to help remove most of the bulk so that it lays nice and smooth when you go to stitch it to the back. And there you have it, friends, your perfectly bound scalloped border. Now that the quilt is ready to shine with those scalloped borders, you can actually proudly look at it and say you did it yourself. Remember, quilting is all about having fun, learning, and creating something beautiful. So take your time, go slow, and have a whole lot of fun learning something new.